years and years, I took people bossing me around when I didn't deserve it. And so finally when I got older, I was so angry inside that I responded inappropriately. But I too had a boss that was just mean to me. And I was just like, graduated college, real little tiny person, and he was all mean. And finally one day, I took it. And I went in his office and I started to tell him how I felt. He told me to get the H out of his office, so I stood there and I slammed the door behind me and proceeded to scream at him. And when I was done, I left, and all the people in the office were clapping and giving me high fives.
I would be too.
But, no, wait. Got a little story to say there. Don't wait to stand up for yourself respectfully, like Mariella was talking about, because I stuffed everything inside so long that when people were mean to me, like I was wrong in my response. Like, you don't scream at people, and sometimes I scream, don't I, Joe?
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
All right, guys. So basically, we can see that everyone pretty much have had that experience, right? Of being bossed. I mean, you only need a parent to be bossed around, right? So here's what I want you to do. I want everybody to stand up. You're not going to have to do much. Just stand up. Okay? So here's what I want. The girls over here are going to face the boys, and the boys are going to face the girls. Yeah. It's not that difficult. I know. Get over it. Life is not fair. Didn't you hear Malcolm?
Your turn.
All right, guys. So here, pay attention. This is what I need you to do. I'm going to give you instructions, okay? And if we do it right the first time, guess what? You don't have to do it again. Okay? All right. So I want you to picture, girls, when you look at the boys, I want you to picture that person that at one point bossed you around. And you're going to say, you're not the boss of me. Boys, when you look at the girls, you're going to picture that person that bossed you around, and you're going to scream, you're not the boss of me. We're going to do it all at once. On the count of 3, you will go, okay? 1, 2, 3. Mom, you're not the boss of me! All right, woo! That feels really good. You can kind of sit down. Sit down. All right, guys. All right, so listen up. That felt a lot better, actually, now that we got that out of the way. So I'm going to share a couple of stories. And one of the stories I'm going to share is guys, I can't really talk if you are talking, because we're going to go a lot longer if I have to stop, okay? All right, good job. All right, guys, so when I was younger, closer to your age, this one time I really want to go to this concert. So I knew that I need to ask my dad for permission, because my mom was very quick at saying no, but my dad, not so much. So I knew how to do it. So I did, and he said, oh, okay, that sounds pretty good. And then Friday comes along, and I'm choosing the outfits that I want to wear for this concert, because, I mean, especially girls, you all know, right? You want to look super cute, right? So that was what I was at, trying to decide between 2 outfits. And I'm asking my mom, so which outfit do you think I should wear? And she's like, where are you going? I was like, oh, I'm going to the concert. The concert's tonight. Didn't that tell you? And my dad immediately just froze, and I could see his face. He was like, oh no, I forgot to tell her. And so he said, what concert? She said, I'm not comfortable with that. And immediately my dad turned on me. He said, whatever your mom says, I'm okay with that. And I'm like, wait a minute. You told me that I could go. That's just not fair. And my mom and I started arguing about, me going, and she's like, no, you're not going. And I had planned for this, and then I had to tell all my friends that I wasn't going. I mean, nobody wants to do that, right? And so we are talking about this, and at one point I could see that no matter what I said, I was not going to that concert. That was just it. That's the way it was going to be. And so I needed to show my frustration. So this is me being a teenager. I stormed into my room, and that was not enough, right? Because anybody can storm into the room. I slammed the door because you get that, I did it, right? And then I went into my room, and back in those days, I'm old. Back in those days, we used to have stereos, and they had big speakers. I mean, those things were loud. I mean, they can totally move your room. And I turned it up really, really high because I wanted to make sure that my parents understood I was very angry, and I was very angry. Time passes by, and I hear this knock on the door. But guess what? I am not going to acknowledge that knock on the door because I know exactly what's going to happen. My mom is going to tell me to turn down the music because probably all the neighbors are calling her and saying, what's going on in your house, right? So I didn't. But in fact, what was happening is that my parents had talked about it, and they said that it was going to be okay for me to go to the concert. But I missed it because I was too busy being angry and showing how much, angry I was, that I totally missed out on a super great thing that I wanted to do. So I know that sometimes, as when you're a teenager, it can feel that the person who is bossing around is not fair. But I can tell you, after being through that age a few times, that they are doing it because they truly love you and because they want the best for you. And they care about you, basically, At your age, it really is kind of like normal to kind of push back on authority figures. To a point, it's healthy because it's part of growing up. Wanting to be your own boss and your own person is kind of how God designed you at this age, right? And I know that every time that somebody wants to tell you what to do when you know what you're supposed to do, in your head, all you can think of is like, oh, you're not the boss of me, right? That's normally how we do it then. But, it's kind of normal to feel that way. But let's be honest. Even though it sounds super great to be your own boss, we're not always the most qualified people for the job. Take me for an example, okay? Scott and I had been married for maybe a couple of months. Prior to us getting married, we decided that the way that we were going to run our finances was by combining both incomes. We didn't want to have separate accounts and separate banks or anything like that. So we agreed on that. But then we said, let's go ahead and sit down because we need to put our finances together so we can see how we're going to manage everything. And so that time came. And when that happened, at one point, as we were talking about the finances, it came very clear to me that Scott was taking over that responsibility. I was like, oh, hold on a second. I mean, I've been independent. I know how to pay bills. Why can't I do it? So I started fighting Scott, basically, or it was a power thing, fighting him over the finances and that I should be doing it. And at one point, he's like giving up, almost. And he said, fine, but if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it this way. And he pulls out a chart that he had made on how to run the finances. And I was like, oh, no, you didn't. I was like, oh, he did not just do that, right? And so I am arguing with him. How dare you think that I'm going to be using your system? If I'm going to run it, it's going to be my way. And we're arguing back and forth. Until finally, Scott actually ends up being the bigger person and the better person. He says, okay, you know what? You want to run the finances, go right ahead. Do it your own way. And so I did. Wasn't that sweet? But it turned out that I was horrible at it. When I was doing my own finances, I only had a few bills. But now that we had combined bills, he had a lot of student loans and you have to pay to different people. And I was like, I went from having 3 bills to pay like 10 because it was like a lot of different stuff. And I did a terrible job. I made sure that everything that, pertained to him was covered. But my bills, I was getting late fees. It was not good at all. So the idea of being your own boss may sound super great, but it's not always the best idea. So today we're going to take a look a little bit, we're going to take a look at a group of people that tried to be their own bosses and things didn't go so well. So we're going to travel to the Old Testament just for a short minute, for a short second here. And we are going to look at Exodus 21-3. But before we do that, I just want to give you the little scenario on what's happening and what the situation was at the time. So this is the time of Exodus. You guys remember that after all the terrible things that God did because Pharaoh wouldn't let his people go. Finally, Pharaoh says, okay, fine, Moses, just take your people, take him. And so he takes them. And what happens right after he takes all the Israelites go free? What happens? Let's remember. Yes, he changes his mind, and he does what? Yes, he starts chasing after them. He sends the army after them. And there's a point where the Israelites are coming to a dead end. There's nowhere to go except for the Red Sea. And what does God do with them? Tell me, because I know you know the story. He parts the Red Sea, right? And so basically, God showed up in a super big way for them, right? And then he just tells them, okay, follow me. We're going to go in a little journey through the desert. And at the end of our journey, I am going to lead you to this fantastic, amazing land so that you can settle down and be free. But we all know that that's not quite how it happened. It was what God had planned for them, but it didn't happen because they were disobedient, they were rebelling against God, they were making idols, I mean, the whole 9 yards. And God is like, you know, you're not ready. So he keeps on extending their time in the desert. This little story reminds me of our parents. You know, when you're little, you're like maybe like 3 or something like that. I mean, one of the things that you want so much is a bike. Most kids want a bike. But your parents know that you're not ready for a bike. So they give you what? A little tricycle, right? Because you need to learn the movements of pedaling, steering, and then they get this super cute bike, and it still has two little wheels at the end, right, in the back. And there's a reason for that. You're still not quite ready, okay? And once you have mastered, you know, going up and down, hills and turning and all kinds of things, then your parents take off those wheels because now you're ready. So basically, what God was doing for them was teaching them how they needed to be in order to be able to cross to the promised land. So at one point in the book of Exodus, we see that Moses goes on top of the mountain, and God gives him what? A piece of bread? The 10 Commandments. Good job. Okay, now we're not going to go through that, but we're going to take a little sneak peek at the first one, just that one. And we're going to put it up on the slide on, the first one is 21-3, and this is what it says. And God spoke all these words, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. So let me tell you why he's saying this. Back in those days, where in the time of the Israelites, it was very common for them to have the one God, Jehovah, but then they have these other little gods. And what God is saying to them, oh, no. I cannot be just the number one God, I'm on the 20. I need to be the only God. You need to worship me only, period. And that's basically what he was saying, because that's what they needed to do in order to be able to cross to the promised land. Well, you know, today I know that we're not going to be tempted to make an idol out of a golden calf or anything like that, like the Israelites did. But we are definitely going to be tempted to worship a God that I know so well, and I know you do too, which is the God of me. This guy right here, okay? So we're always tempted to worship that God of me, okay? How do you know that you do that? Well, when you put yourself first, you're worshiping the God of me. Maybe you share a little gossip and make somebody else look bad. Or maybe you put somebody down, you know? Or you just decide that you are not going to obey God because you know best, and you're going to make your own decisions without even praying about it, okay? And let me just tell you, it's not just you or it's just me who have the tendency to worship the God of me. Even back in the times when Jesus was here, the disciples, I mean, they were the closest people to Jesus, and they got caught up in the worshiping of the God of me. I mean, can you imagine back in those days, you had Jesus as your personal teacher for years, and even the disciples got caught up into the God of me. Let me just read really quickly what it says in Mark 10:35-37. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they say, we want you to do whatever we ask. Oh, they are talking to Jesus, and they're like, we want you to do whatever we ask. All right. Verse 36, What do you want me to do for you? He asked. They replied, let one of us sit on the right and the other one on the left in your glory. Okay, so they wanted to make sure they got the best seats when they went to heaven. I mean, imagine that. Okay, James and John were very brave. They were brave disciples, and sometimes they were a little bit wrong-headed. But in this particular passage, they were focused on one thing, themselves, worshiping the God of me, basically. And they even had the audacity to boss Jesus around and like, we want you to do whatever it is that we want. I was like, okay. So here's something that Jesus says. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? We can, they replied. I mean, how arrogant. They had no idea what they were really getting themselves into. But in the next verses, basically what happens at this point is that the other disciples, the other 10 disciples, realized what James and John had done. And they were not happy. They were pretty mad because how dare they think they were better than the other 10, right? That's basically what they did. And so I can imagine that there was a lot of drama in that house on that day. And Jesus was like, oh, okay, this is getting out of hand. Everybody just come on over, come on over. I got something that I want to say to you. And this is what he says on verse 43. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be a slave of all. Wow. Take that for an answer, James and John, right? So basically, according to Jesus, there is a way how we can defeat the God of me, okay? We can defeat the God of me, or the tendency to idolize ourselves when we put ourselves last, when we give instead of take, when we serve instead of waiting to be served. So, how do you know if you're worshiping the God of me, you may ask? Well, here are some signs, okay? We have them up on the screen, okay? When you act selfishly, and we see that in Mark 10:35. When you speak arrogantly, and we can see that in Mark 37:39. So if you believe or if you think that you are worshiping the God of me, what can you do? Here are some ideas, okay? You can act selflessly. So that means that you go last and instead of going first, and that you serve others. You want to respond humbly. Be quicker to listen than you are to speak. And don't assume that you know everything, because you don't, and neither do I. Okay, you guys remember in my example, when my parents were knocking on the door, I assumed that they were going to tell me to turn the volume down. But I missed out because, you know, I was just ugly in worshiping myself, that I missed out on something super great. Another thing you can do is to apologize when you're wrong, and that's a big one. I know it's a big one for me, because sometimes it may feel like if you're apologizing, you lose, and that's not what it is. And so when you're having those thoughts, you know that you're worshiping the God of me, and you don't want to do that. Worshiping the God of me is not the God that you want to serve at all, because you can hurt yourself and you can hurt others. And most importantly, you can miss out on the amazing things that God may have in store for you. In a few more moments, we are going to go ahead and pray. But before we do that, I just want to leave you with this. This week, it is my prayer for you that you will be able to identify when you are worshiping the God of me, and that you will be able to choose to give up your seat. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you so much for this day, Father God, for teaching us about the danger of worshiping the God of me. Father God, we just ask that when we are tempted or when we find ourselves worshiping the God of me, that you will help us turn around, Lord, this week, help us to look for ways on how we can be humble, kind, so that we won't miss what you have in store for us. In your name we pray. Amen.
There's one more song. Sweet.
One more song. Sorry, guys.